Hey everyone, today we are going to talk about the Romantic Age in English literature, the most unique and the shortest of all literary ages. So let's get started. The word romantic was first used in the 16th century and it would mean unreal, extraordinary, unworldly and imaginative things. And it was used with negative connotations, with negative meaning in 18th century. See, 18th century was an age that attached more importance to reason and rationality than to emotion. So emotions, imagination, it was something that were looked down upon, and being emotional was considered to be a sign of weakness rather than strength. So the word was used with negative meaning till the 18th century, till the later part of the 18th century, and in its modern meaning it was first used now in popular culture. The popular meaning of the word romance is the relationship between two lovers. This is how we we imagine this word romance. We have seen so many of Hindi films that the word romance, whenever it is said, we are inclined to think that it talks about a relationship of love between two people. But its literary meaning is far, far different and way wider than its popular meaning. And in literary meaning, romance could mean love of nature, it could mean love of past, of bygone ages, love of the medieval times, it could mean mystery, it could mean love for adventure, it could mean emotional, it could mean being emotional, being imaginative. These are just a few ideas that are attached to this word romance, and there are many things that can be included in this umbrella term called romance. What is Romantic Age? What is Romanticism all about? Now, Romanticism was an artistic and intellectual movement that began in Europe. It was an artistic movement because artists of all kinds, not just people who were creating literature, but artists of all kinds, whether they were painters or they were musicians, they were all concerned with it, and it was an intellectual movement because it involved thinkers also. So it was an artistic movement, it was an intellectual movement, and it took place in Europe, and it took place in Europe towards the end of the 18th century and the beginning of 19th century. And it was a break from the guiding principles of the Enlightenment. Now, the age of Enlightenment was the age which preceded the Romantic Age. So the basic principles, the basic guiding principles of the age of Enlightenment was reason, rationality, argument, and this reason, it formed the foundation of all knowledge during the age of Enlightenment. So emotion took a back seat. People, whenever they created, instead of talking about their real emotions, they talked about those things which they thought that they were right to talk about. So it was a break. Romanticism was a break from those principles of Enlightenment. And the Romantic movement emphasized the importance of emotional sensitivity and individual subjectivity. These two things are very important: emotions and individualism, subjectivity. These are the guiding principles of Romantic movement. So the Romantic writers, they gave more importance to emotions, to sensitivity, to individual subjectivity, to what an individual felt and whether he was able to express his feelings in writing or not. This was what they thought literature was all about. And for the Romantics, imagination rather than reason was the most important creative faculty. So we can see the shift here. In the age of Enlightenment, reason, rationality, intellect, argument was the foundation of all knowledge. And for the Romantics, imagination was the basis of creative faculty. Imagination was the basis of creation. So there was a complete shift in the way these writers or these thinkers were approaching life, were approaching arts, and were approaching literature. So far as the beginning of Romantic Age is concerned, there is no unanimity among critics as to when did this age begin. So there are many critics who believe that the age of sensibility, which is also known as the age of Johnson, since it started challenging the way poetry or literature was being written during its preceding ages, so this age of sensibility is the beginning of Romantic Age. And there are other critics who believe that 1789, the year when the French Revolution happened, so that year is the beginning of Romantic Age, because French Revolution had a deep impact on the sensibility of the thinkers and the way the poets and thinkers were writing about things. And still there are other critics and writers who believe that 1798 is the year that Romantic Age actually began. And this year is important because there is this one important piece of writing, Lyrical Ballads, which is a collection of poems written by William Wordsworth and S.T. Coleridge. This collection of poems was published in 1798, and many people believe that this should be considered as the beginning of Romantic Age. But we have to understand one fact very clearly here, that there was no particular moment or no particular day that we can say that the Romantic Age began on that day or that moment, because these changes were taking place gradually in the sensibility of people, in the way they perceived the world, and the world was getting more and more complex because of various issues about which we will talk later. So it was a gradual approach of these ideas that that culminated into this movement or the style of writing that we know by the name of Romanticism. And likewise, for the ending of the age, there is this idea that it died somewhere between 1830 to 1850. So there are many critics who believe that 1832 is the year that this age ended, because the Reform Bill was passed and a very major romantic writer, Walter Scott, died in that year. But there are still others who believe that 1837 is the year that this age ended, because Queen Victoria ascended the throne of England, and 1837 is considered to be officially the beginning of the Victorian age in English literature. So there is no unanimity regarding that, but the general belief is that we consider the beginning of the age to be in the year 1798 and the end of the age to be in 1837. So it started somewhere towards the end of the 18th century and it ended in the 1830s. Now talking about the factors and the forces that helped in shaping, that were the reason that the Romantic Age began, are the first one is the American Revolution. Now the American Revolution between 1765 to 1783, it influenced the whole world and it reinforced the ideals of democracy and freedom. See, the society had already started to believe that man is born free, and now their belief was strengthened. This revolution, it showed the path of freedom and equal human rights to the world, and also adversely impacted the imperial ambition of the British and the European people. But there was one more revolution that was about to change the course of this world, and that revolution was the French Revolution. Now, the French Revolution of 1789, it changed forever the way the whole world lived and thought. So its ideals of liberty, equality and fraternity, they reverberated across the world and they impacted the sensibility of generations to come. Now more emphasis was laid on individual freedom, individual happiness, and the old order of aristocracy and feudalism, it received serious blows, and it was clear that the future was going to be far different from the present. Now, in the Industrial Revolution which took place, the first phase of the Industrial Revolution took place between 1760 to 1840. That is, it started somewhere during the middle of 18th century and ended somewhere in the middle of 19th century. This Industrial Revolution, it impacted the whole society in various ways. It changed the whole social fabric, it changed the whole economic the economic structure of countries, and it also impacted the political face of the countries. So the most important aspect of this revolution was that people were moving from villages to cities. London was a big metropolis, and many people were coming to London in search of better life, in search of employment. But this movement from villages to cities, it gave rise to poverty. Not just gave rise, I mean, poverty became more easily visible in these big centers, and the chasm between the rich and the poor, it widened. So earlier it was feudalism. Earlier they were the feudal lords who were oppressing people. Now capitalism took the place of feudalism. So Industrial Revolution was one big influence. It changed the whole society, and it made the whole society more complex, and the poets, the writers, the thinkers, they found it extremely difficult to write in the old way, because the old way of writing was insufficient to capture the complexities of this new age. People were emotionally unstable. There was so much that they wanted to express, and the earlier way of writing, it did not have any scope, any space for emotion and individual expression. So Industrial Revolution was one of the major reasons that there was a shift in the way writing was produced, poetry was written, and the whole idea of literature was conceived. This is just an introduction to the Romantic Age. We will continue talking about the Romantic Age in the next video. So, goodbye for now.